The Republicans are fighting among themselves, but Texas keeps burying all the kids from gun violence, basically. And the lone, Texas, known as the Lone Star State, is the capital of gun violence. But instead of doing anything, the Republicans are just eating their own. Um, there was a time when Texas was famous for the line that Colonel William Travis drew in the sand at the Alamo. The mission was surrounded by Mexican soldiers, and Travis had been informed by General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna that if he didn't surrender the Alamo, all of Travis's soldiers would be killed. Um, Now Travis drew his sword and dragged it through the sand to make his famous line. His men had the choice. They could either choose to surrender and leave the Alamo, and their lives would be spared, or they could cross the line, remain with him at the Alamo, and defend the honor of Texas to their death. Um, and legend has it that all but one of Travis's men crossed that line and fought to defend the Alamo to their death. Um, Now, the line in the sand for the state of Texas today is where you stand on gun violence, and no one has crossed it to defend the citizens of Texas against the mass murderers who have taken the lives of 17 Texas citizens so far this year. Um, Five members of a family were killed in their home in Cleveland on April 28th, and eight people were killed outside a shopping mall in Allen, Texas on May 6th, and on Tuesday of this week, four family members were killed in Texarkana by their 18-year-old son and brother. A year ago this week, 19 school children and two teachers were killed at an elementary school in Uvalde by an 18-year-old with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, which was the same weapon that was used in Cleveland and Allen. Now, Texas is way ahead of the rest of the nation this year when it comes to gun violence, according to figures from the Gun Violence Archive. Um, Now, going back to May 8th, Texas had 17 mass shootings this year alone, which is the national average for other states. Now, the national average for other states was 4.04. Now, at least 214 people have been killed by firearms in Texas, and the national average is 92. Now, Texas alone this year has had three mass murders. And the national average in that state is 0.42. Now, 13 children under the age of 11 have been killed in Texas this year alone, and the national average for that age group is 1.83. Now, 56 teenagers between the ages of 12 and 17 have been killed this year alone in Texas, and the national average for that age group is 10.52. Now, the state of Texas alone, has the loosest gun laws in the country. Now, many states have a ban on the sale of assault rifles like the AR-15 to people between the ages of 18 and 20. Texas does not have a ban on that, which they should, though. The AR-15 rifle that's used by the 18-year-old murderer in Uvalde was bought legally just before he went to rob elementary school and killed 19 children and two teachers. In 2021, the Texas legislature passed under Governor Greg Abbott signed a constitutional carry bill that allows anyone to carry a concealed weapon pretty much anywhere they fucking want to, because Texas also passed laws allowing firearms on state college campuses. Greg Abbott recently refused to propose a bill limiting the sale of AR-15 rifles to those under 21, telling reporters that it would be unconstitutional, and many other states have exactly that same law. Now, with hundreds of Texans dying every year from gun violence, with the number of mass killings and mass shootings significantly higher than most states in the country, with little children under age 6 among the dead in the three recent mass murders, you would think that the Texas legislature and the governor would be trying to pass at least some law or laws that would help protect innocent people from the murders among them. But you'd be fucking wrong. Now, what has the Texas legislature been doing since the mass killings in Cleveland and Allen and Texarkana? In a state with one-party rule, Republicans control the state House and the state Senate, and they hold the governorship, the lieutenant governorship, and the state attorney general's office. The party in charge have been squabbling, and what have they been squabbling about? Well, on Wednesday, the day after the 18-year-old in Texarkana killed his entire family, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton accused House Speaker David Phelan of being drunk as he presided over the state's lower legislative body during the late night session last Friday. And Paxton made the accusation as a legislative committee, and the Committee on General Investigating, and was sitting to consider allegations against Paxton for firing members of his staff who accused him of criminal acts in office, as well as breaches of ethical rules. Now, attorneys for the committee they met on Wednesday to hear witnesses and they consider the written and electronic evidence that Paxton had accepted gifts and other remittances from a major political donor in return for favors regarding real estate deals, and the donor was involved in. Now, when members of his office fired whistleblower complaints against Paxton, he fired them all. When the whistleblowers sued him for improper termination, Paxton had sought to use $3 million in state tax money to settle that lawsuit. Now, on Thursday, the Republican-dominated investigative committee voted to recommend articles of impeachment against Paxton. Attorneys for the committee told reporters that evidence that they had accumulated will be sufficient to bring at least a dozen criminal charges against him. That committee cannot charge Paxton criminally, but among the crimes cited by the lawyers were using his office in an official capacity to benefit that donor, harassing and oppressing members of his own staff, securities fraud, and making false statements to investigators. The allegations include a charge that Paxton turned over an FBI investigative file related to his friend and donor, and they also used state funds to hire a lawyer to do work that benefited the donor. Now Paxton has been under state indictment for crimes he had committed while a member of the state house in 2011. Now, those indictments were handed down after he assumed office as Attorney General back in 2015, and Paxton has resisted them ever since. In fact, he has been reelected twice since he was indicted, which gives you some idea of the stranglehold the Republican Party has on the Texas politics. Now, late on Thursday, the General Investigating Committee had voted for 20 articles of impeachment against Paxton, including disregarding official duties, bribery, making false statements, misappropriation of public funds, dereliction of official duties, and obstructing justice. Now, as of Friday, the Texas House has scheduled a vote on the articles of impeachment against Paxton for Saturday. If the vote is successful, Paxton will become just the third official impeached in Texas history. Now, under Texas law, he would be removed from office pending a trial on the charges and vote in the state Senate. The state law allows the House to keep working on the impeachment after the legislative session will end on Monday, but the law also permits the House to call itself back into session at will, and the state House has the same option. So Paxton's impeachment would continue despite the end of the legislative session. Now, hold on a second here. An Associated Press reports on the fight within the Texas. So the Associated Press reports on the fight within the Texas Republican Party had called the speed with which the state house has proceeded dizzying. As of this writing, the conservatives in the party, including Paxton's own wife, who holds a Senate seat and will presumably vote in her husband's trial when it's considered by that body, as they are standing by Paxton, although some of his support is slowly bleeding away. The chairman of the state Republican Party, Matt Rinaldi, called the impeachment a sham and called on the Senate to vote on the vote to retain Paxton in office, even though he's been breaking everything. And here's where it gets interesting and even more fun. Rinaldi had targeted Speaker Phelan as a Democrat trying to wrestle control of the party from conservatives. And Rinaldi implied that the voters of Texas had already spoken, re-electing Paxton in 2022, and what was going on was a Democratic speaker trying to undermine his conservative adversaries, which is not the case. The gradations of Democratic and the conservative among Texas Republicans appear to be unique to the state. Now, Paxton has accused Phelan of slow walking the new gun legislation that would further loosen any restrictions that are still remaining on guns in the state of Texas. Now, a case brought in Texas has already been overturned. Has already overturned the state's law banning ownership of firearms by spouses accused or even convicted of domestic violence. The arch-conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the law because there were no laws against domestic violence at the time. The Second Amendment was written back in 1791, and therefore it could have been there could have been no laws restricting the sales or use of firearms by persons who committed domestic violence. Now the decision essentially returned state law to the 1700s, when Texas was still part of the Spanish-ruled Mexico when it comes to domestic violence and the regulations of any firearms. Now, one major flashpoint in the internecine warfare within the Texas Republican Party is, of course, Donald Trump. Paxton has been a strong ball licker of Trump, and he has vowed to continue licking Trump's nuts in 2024. Now, Phelan has been less supportive of Trump and has been described in press reports as a moderating influence in the party. Now, nobody in the Texas Republican Party, however, is moderate enough to stand up for the rights of the citizens of Texas to be safe in their own homes, schools, shopping malls, and any Walmart stores. And that's where freedom stands. It stands in Texas today. You're free to go out and buy an AR-15 and all the ammunition that you can fucking carry, even when you're too young to buy a drink in a bar. But you're not free to go to school or to the mail or church or even to sit in your own home watching television without the fear of being shot and killed. And that's a line in the sand which neither faction in the Texas Republican Party is willing to cross. Which is why sometimes Texas can be fucked up as it is. But if you like the video, you can get the video, like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. You can also leave a comment, let me know what you think. And if you want to support my channel even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a video or a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.